Hello and welcome back to SpookBox, the podcast where that gum you like is always coming back in style. I'm Dav, and as always, I'm joined by two of my very own Black Lodge spirits. I've got Heather here.
Hello.
And Connor.
Hi.
How are we all doing today, guys? We doing all right?
Oh, fantastic. Is that a lie? That might be a lie.
How was my intro?
Oh, your intro was incredible. Best intro we've had so far, I think.
I'm kind of like chugging along. I feel like I've got some acid reflux from drinking too much.
Hopefully listeners
lockdown.
will be able to hear that.
Yeah, it's added a nice vocal fry.
Yeah.
So we're
You're a little
just
husky.
Yeah, I'm a wee bit husky, but I think that'll add a sense of maturity to my opinions today.
Agree. Right, well, okay, before we get into talking about this week's film, which is the Twin Peaks film Fire Walk With Me, released in 1992, directed by David Lynch, we thought we'd get started on a sort of more serious note, because we'd be remiss not to address the situations surrounding the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. More than ever, it's a good time to become educated and informed, especially if you're a white listener with us. We're including a link in the description of this YouTube video to a podcast by Scene on Radio exploring white privilege. We encourage you to give it a listen. I've also found a really comprehensive list of Black Lives Matters related causes you can donate to, and lots of other really useful resources on the Resident Advisor website. We'll put a link for that as well. Donate if you can and share if you can't. Okay, without any further ado, let's get right into the podcast. Fire Walk With Me. The film primarily revolves around the investigation into the murder of Teresa Banks and the last days of Laura Palmer, a popular high school student beset by drugs, sex, and a strange extra-dimensional demon named Bob. I wanted to get some first impressions from y'all. What do we think of this film? What did we think? What was our main takeaway of the film?
Well, I'm a big Twin Peaks stan. I watched it as a teen, but never saw Fire Walk With Me because I think I inherited some kind of puritanism about the TV show.
Yeah, it was
from the internet,
true.
maybe, and it was like, oh no, I'm not going to watch that.
Famously derided when it came out, and I think since then has become, since the third season has become kind of a key part of the Twin Peaks story. I think
for sure. I really enjoyed that first segment with Chris Isaacs.
Yeah.
Chris Isaacs?
Chris Isaacs.
Is there more than one Chris? There is a singular Chris Isaac.
Well, I mean, that's up for debate.
Maybe there's one in the other lodge. Who knows?
Sure.
Maybe he goes to the lodge. Yeah, no, that was really cool. I just love the universe that Lynch has created. So I was really happy to spend more time in it. I think it also really fleshed out the TV show. It adds more depth to it. It adds context, not knowing what happened the night Laura Palmer died exactly. Getting to see that take place is really satisfying as a fan of Twin Peaks.
That's definitely something we'll talk about is, whether this film adds or detracts from the entire series, really.
Equally, I think it's a bit of a paradox trying to talk about anything that Lynch has created. You take one step forward and then you're like, wait, did that happen though? Am I right to say that?
Yeah.
It's really difficult to discuss, but we're going to give a crack at it. So yeah, what did you think, Connor?
Connor, yeah, thoughts?
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it?
I didn't like it. I've been thinking about it for the last, 2 days since we checked it out. And, right. So I am not a Twin Peaks dude. I don't know. There are people whose, worldview revolves around Twin Peaks. Not me. I only saw Twin Peaks for the first time maybe 4 years ago with you, Heather. I think we watched it together, and I like it. I like it fine. I think I actually, I do like the TV series, and I think it's a really cool, interesting world. But I think I feel like the part of Fire Walk With Me that I actually did enjoy was the bit that we've already talked about, Chris Isaac, but let's call it the Wicked Game section.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just think that so much of Fire Walk With Me as a film is fleshing out stuff that doesn't need to be fleshed out. And I suppose he doesn't really flesh it out because it's more, he sort of adds more questions than gives answers. Maybe it's a way of saying, there's never going to be a clear answer to who killed Laura Palmer because it's not a murder. It's not a murder in the traditional sense. There's something more to it. There's something more supernatural. But just generally thinking about it on the whole, I would rather have been watching, Twin Peaks, the season 3 that I saw.
Yes. Yeah.
Something like that. So I don't know. On the whole, I just don't really know if I liked it. But I'm going to try and give it a shot. I'm trying to give it its fair due.
Great.
As we're chatting about it.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So if we have no further comments for now, I'm just going to shoot right into the summary of what I could sort of patch together as a summary.
Best attempt.
Thanks, Wikipedia. So, Bureau Chief Gordon Cole sends agents Chester Desmond and Sam Stanley to investigate the murder of teenage sex worker Teresa Banks in Deer Meadow, Washington. Details of the assignment are given an obscure code by a woman named Lil, who wears a blue rose on her lapel. With some pushback from local law enforcement, Desmond and Stanley observe Teresa's body in a morgue and find that a ring is missing from her finger and a tiny piece with the letter T printed on it has been inserted under one of her fingernails. The duo eat at Hap's Diner, Teresa's former place of work, whereupon they find out from the surly waitress that before her disappearance, Teresa's arm went numb for a few days. Later, when Desmond and Stanley investigate the Fat Trout trailer park, Desmond finds Teresa's ring under one of the trailers and then, I guess, disappears?
Yeah, I guess, right?
End of beginning. At the FBI headquarters in Philadelphia, Cole and Agent Dale Cooper encounter their long-lost colleague, Agent Philip Jeffries, played by David Bowie, who tells in cryptic language about a gathering he witnessed involving several spirits, including the man from another place, Bob, Mrs. Chalfont, and her grandson. Coop is sent to Deer Meadow to investigate Desmond's disappearance, finding no real answers other than the phrase "Let's Rock" written in pink on a car windshield at the Fat Trout trailer park. 1 year later, Twin Peaks High School homecoming queen Laura Palmer is cheating on her boyfriend Bobby Briggs with James Hurley and is secretly addicted to cocaine. Laura discovers that pages are missing from her secret diary and, panicked, gives the rest of the diary to her agoraphobic friend Harold Smith, where she confides in him that a man named Bob has been, quote, having her since she was 12. Mrs. Chalfont and her grandson appear to Laura as she volunteers for the R Diner's Meals on Wheels program, warning her that the man behind the mask is in her bedroom and giving her a portrait of an open door. That is, Mrs. Chalfont and her grandson give her the portrait, which Laura later puts on her wall. Laura runs home, where she finds Bob skulking near the former hiding place of her secret diary. Terrified, Laura runs away to find her father Leland leaving the house moments later. Leland's behavior becomes increasingly erratic and aggressive, accusingly asking Laura about her love life and obsessing over her dirty fingernails. That night, Laura dreams of walking through the open door in the portrait and enters the Black Lodge, an extra-dimensional space decorated with red curtains and chevron floors. The man from another place appears in the dream, offering Teresa's ring to Laura, but Cooper, also in the dream, tells her not to take it. A bloodied woman in a floral dress named Annie Blackburn appears in Laura's bed, telling her to write in her diary, "The good Dale is in the lodge and cannot leave." Laura sees the ring in her hand, but upon waking, finds that it's gone. Laura then goes to the Roadhouse to meet her drug connections, Jacques and his accomplices. He's a barman, where she watches a musical performance of Questions in a World of Blue by Julie Cruz. Just as she is joined by two men willing to pay to have sex with her, Laura's best friend Donna Hayward joins them. They then go to the Pink Room venue, a sort of anything-goes space for sex and drugs, where Laura discusses Teresa's murder with Ronette Polanski, another girl who works for the same kind of, similar kind of role to Laura. Upon seeing Donna engage in sexual activity with a stranger, Laura takes her home in a panic, warning her against becoming like her. The next morning, Leland and Laura are going to meet Laura's mother for breakfast, and in a frenzied scene at a road crossing, the two are approached by Mike, one of the spirits, the one-armed man, who attempts to warn Laura that Leland is in fact being possessed by Bob. In a flashback sequence, Leland recalls his affair with Teresa Banks, who had initially asked to set up a foursome with some of her friends. Upon discovering that Laura was among her friends, Leland kills Teresa. We're nearly at the end now. One night, Bob crawls through Laura's window and begins to rape her, and transforms into Leland. Distraught, Laura begs Bobby for more cocaine, but Bobby ends their relationship. Later, Laura breaks up with James and goes to a remote cabin in the woods for an orgy with Renette, Jacques, and Leo Johnson. Leland follows her there, incapacitates Jacques and Leo, and takes Laura and Ronette to an abandoned train carriage. As Leland/Bob is about to possess Laura, she is given Teresa's ring by Mike, quietly standing outside the train carriage. Wearing the ring prevents Bob from possessing her, and Leland kills Laura and beats Ronette unconscious. Leland/Bob wraps Laura up in plastic and sets her body afloat down the river. Leland/Bob enters the Black Lodge, where Mike and the man from another place demand their share of Garmonbozia, pain and sorrow. Cooper comforts Laura's spirit in the Black Lodge, and Laura sees an angel. She begins to cry and laugh. The end.
God, guys, I just need to tell you something, and it's weird, but I had a dream that we were...
Did you dream of Philip Jeffries?
I had a dream that we were going for curry, and that one of the curries was a corn curry called Garmonbozia.
Oh, really?
I swear to God. And then but in the dream I was like, oh, right, so that's where, so Lynch was just messing about and called Pain and Sorrow this like quite well known Garmonbozia curry. Mm-hmm. This is weird. That's freaky. Okay.
Also, in the film, Garmonbozia is sort of like it's corn. It's like creamed corn.
Yeah, it sounds like the Spanish word for chickpea.
Oh yeah. Oh man, what is that again? Garbanzo.
Something like
Garbanzo,
that.
yeah, I think that's right.
Garbanzo bean, isn't it?
This is all the more reason that we need corrections.
We should have been doing our Duolingo much harder during lockdown. Like that's been leaked now.
It's funny, creamed corn.
The owl's coming after us, the Duolingo owl and the Twin Peaks
There's
owl.
a lot of weird synchronicity here because I made corn fritters for dinner last night, if you remember.
This is all freaking me out.
This is what Lynch does. He makes you see these kind of like strange occurrences and add some weight to them. And I love that relationship with the supernatural. I think that stuff happens all the time that we can't explain. But like, in a sense, I find it strange what you said earlier, Connor, that, you know, you weren't that enamored with this film. Like, for me, Lotta Palmer's a character who is the central point of the whole narrative in the Twin Peaks TV show, but we don't really get to see and know that much about. And knowing that she's such a tragic character and seeing that play out in Fire Walk with Me, like, just adds more emotional involvement on my part with the show, and like seeing that she was such a victim as well of these forces, it just kind of adds an extra thing to the Twin Peaks universe.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I'm really conflicted about it. Hearing the plot summary definitely made me think, wow, that's some that's some heavy shit. Like, it's definitely it's really rough, you know. I mean,
it is, yeah. The plot is really heavy. It's very,
she's
very sad.
She's had a lot of like traumatic things happen to her. It's really sad, and the way that this narrative comes together with like these other spaces, like other dimensional places, spirits, like it, you know, it could all be real, or it could all be like a way for her to cope. Like there's so many different ways to look at it, but it makes it more fascinating.
I think that's exactly the problem that I have with it, is that it's like it's really serious subject matter.
Yeah. And,
you know, it's the kind of thing that hearing about it would just reduce me to tears off the bat. And I suppose, you know, in Twin Peaks, whether or not it was intended, you know, when we were watching it anyway, I got the feeling that Leland was abusing his daughter, you know, and it's something that's so awful that it's almost beyond words. And so then that Lynch kind of went back and tried to do a kind of Phantom Menace of Twin Peaks. He tried to show you something that's, you know, more horrible than you can really imagine. And I think maybe he's done it in a really good way where it's so awful that it kind of transcends dimension, but then at the same time it happens. It does actually happen. I wish it didn't happen. I don't know. I'm really, really conflicted on this one. And I think I'm inevitably, I want to bring up stuff like Top of the Lake and, other attempts at doing these kinds of narratives. And I read a wee bit of some academic stuff to kind of help guide me through this. But, we'll see what comes up. What sort of questions do you have in mind?
Well, I wanted to start off with asking if this summary is at all accurate.
I had a little bit of a difficulty with you mentioning, well, first of all, props. I think you did really well.
Yeah,
I have Wikipedia to thank.
With the ring, I didn't realise that the ring stopped Laura being possessed.
So this was something that I read after the fact.
Yes, but you didn't get that from viewing it.
I didn't get it from the scene.
Neither did I.
I think it's in there, but you need to go looking for it.
Okay.
I think by that stage of the film, you've already sort of surrendered to this weird logic. You don't necessarily know what the ring is or what it's supposed to do or why it's significant necessarily.
So it's interesting to me that somebody has kind of put it down on paper and said this is what the ring does. It stops you being possessed.
Yeah.
Either that's in either that's in like peripheral literature or something.
Okay.
I don't know. I only put it in there. Why do you hate it? I'm curious as to why you hate it.
Right, okay. I'm really glad you asked. No, so
I suspect we might hate it for the same reason. I don't know.
I really like magic. Mm-hmm.
The Gathering.
MTG, man, all the way. Let's tap some mana. No, I like magic in shows. I like magic in films. I like magic in books. But I only like it when magic is magic. Arthur C. Clarke said that science operating at its perfection would be indistinguishable from magic. So for me, that's kind of that's the bar. That if something is working absolutely perfectly, if you cannot fathom how something functions, then that's it being magic. I really like magic in Harry Potter. I really like magic in Lord of the Rings because it's really weird. It's beyond human comprehension, however this is working. Mm-hmm. There was a series of novels, I think it was called The Sorcerer's Apprentice, no, not Sorcerer's Apprentice. Oh God, I'm not even going to bother remembering it. Maybe it was called The Assassins something, I don't know. Sorcerer's Guild, I'm pretty sure it was actually called Sorcerer's Guild.
And is that a series of books?
Series of books, and in it, I thought it was so daft. In it, characters would like touch different metals, mm-hmm. and then they could do different things based on different metals. But it was like somebody describing a video game to you. Like if you pick up copper, you can do a really big jump. It's like, I didn't need to know that. Magic's magic. It confounds expectation.
And yet you like the Phantom Menace.
No, I hate the Phantom Menace. Go away with that.
But I don't feel like Lynch over-explains the magic at all. I think he under-explains it.
So I really like how Lynch does magic. And that's why I would hate somebody going like, oh yeah, the ring. Quite clearly the rings with the runes on them prevent possession from Bob.
But that's what we're here to do. We're podcasting about it. Like,
hell no.
It's
we're
fun
here to
just
celebrate the unknown.
Oh, okay.
Or the unknowable.
So you don't want me to tell you what the symbol on the ring seems to have been taken from?
Okay, I've got one more wee bit to say, one more wee thing, okay? And it's, right, the bit that I absolutely love in the Harry Potter books is in the first one, where Snape sets up, got a wee pop on the mic there, Snape sets up a logic puzzle for to keep people away from the Sorcerer's Stone, the Philosopher's Stone. And his wee logic puzzle is really simple. If you just follow the instructions, you can figure it out. Like, he gives you these 4 clues to figure out which bottles contain potions and which bottles contain poisons. And some have nettle wine. But the thing is, most wizards in the Harry Potter world just don't get logic because they do things with magic. So isn't that clever?
That is clever.
Isn't that super clever? So it's really...
So logic's
it's a different philosophy
like a kind of
mind.
magic to the wizards in a way. Like Logic
No.
is something that they...
It's not magic. It's like the opposite of magic because it follows these like rules and structures. It was really hard for Snape to set up this like Alice in Wonderland style logic riddle. Like you can imagine him being really proud of this. And if any wizard had tried to complete it, they would have been stuck because they just would have got frustrated and would have wanted magic to try and just jump to the answer, jump to the end, you know. Whereas Hermione is able to solve it because she's a human being. She's able to just it's a silly little logic puzzle to a human, you know. So I love that distinction that Rowling creates. Now I know Rowling's like cancelled and all that, but like I don't know, still good book, good fun. Sure. So I don't know. For me, it's like don't turn Twin Peaks into a logic puzzle. That's my hashtag.
I kind of couldn't agree more, and I think that I think that this is why I had so much trouble thinking about talking points for this film, because when you talk about analyzing film, you maybe think about what certain directorial choices mean, or what is the director trying to say. But with Lynch's films, and I think to a degree, I think this is the beginning of late Lynch. I think this is a style that he develops later on in Lost Highway and later on in Mulholland Drive and the third season of Twin Peaks.
I've heard that, yeah.
Is that he is more content just not telling you how anything works. He wants you to sort of just roll with it.
Right.
I think that he gives you the key to understanding his universe. In the start of Fire Walk With Me, we have that character Lil, who is performing in a very odd way until Chris Isaac's character explains the code of everything she's done. He says that the Sir face represents one thing, the blue rose, he can't say what that... And every symbol, it's very symbolic the way she's dressed up, relates to something else. And we get that in like the first 10 minutes of the movie. And I can't help but feel that that's an invitation to read the symbols and create meaning from them, not necessarily as a logic, but to do like a dream interpretation basically on his movies. And everyone might get a different one, but I think that people on the internet, it's fun to try and collectively read the symbols that he lays out for you, because he does show you that that is a way to enter into this supernatural universe.
I feel like he was predicting the Twin Peaks Reddit thread with that.
Strangely, yeah. I think he might have been.
With that
also,
Lil scene.
I think you are sort of right, though, because I think reading Lil the Dancer and what she's sort of doing, like the hem of her skirt being a certain way, meaning a certain thing.
And a lot of people perform that way in Twin Peaks canon. They perform in odd bodily ways. They wear strange clothes. They have weird ways of speaking. And he shows us in that scene that can be read with direct correlates to an understanding.
Oh, but is he not taking the piss?
It's playful and it's funny.
One thing I would say is, what happens to the detectives who do that?
They disappear,
right? Well, one of them does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He goes, fuck your logic. You're going to disappear.
You try to figure out this murder mystery. You're not going to make any sense of it.
It's going to be a bad time.
We're going to disappear you.
So just let it happen to you. Let this surreal performance happen to you and don't try and interpret it. Is that the lesson from Lil and Chris Isaac's interaction?
I don't know. I feel like even trying to get a lesson from it is kind of even maybe missing the point.
The reading, I don't know, like what you just read from it, that the attempt to interpret equals your annihilation.
Yeah, but that's still interpretation. I don't know. It freaks me out, man. But then, look, the main thing I keep coming back to is like all of that. I'm happy with all of that, and I think it's really good fun. And I think he is taking the piss out of the kind of the act of like, well, early 90s film studies anyway, where, you know, a lot of it was just dedicated to a kind of a post-structural analysis of what's on the screen, like just, you know, what possible readings can I come up with a loose understanding of psychoanalysis and, you know, whatever Jean-Luc Godard made that week.
And I think those sort of things reached outside of academia as well. The fans of the show were asking him what any of it means or what things represent.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with all of that. I suppose the thing that makes me uncomfortable, and the reason I think I'm coming down on the line and I'm saying I just didn't like it. With the thing that makes me uncomfortable is if you're doing this whole playful dream logic, Lacanian or Jungian world of dreams, should you really be talking about, incest? And like a 12-year-old girl being abused by her father for, 5 years until she kills her. Well, until he murders her.
So what you said previously could be summed up as it's kind of against interpretation.
Aye.
So should he be going into this very dark, realist material, or at least signaling to it? I think that it works. And there's something in how unsettling reality can be mixed in with the dream sequence stuff that kind of creates this like vision of what life is like that is also, it's like a feeling. It's kind of like, it's his interpretation. Like evil is rubbing up against reality all the time. But as a supposed civilized society, we don't want to reflect on that, but it's happening all the time. So to not shy away from that and to like kind of infuse it with this sort of supernatural element, I think that he succeeds in at least sketching a lived reality in a way, like, or not a lived reality, but a view you could take on reality.
Yes. Yeah, I was talking with you, Dav, about this the other day, about the possibility that there's a kind of impressionist realism, a kind of like a psycho-realism to this.
A magic realism, almost.
I suppose magic realism is probably the best term for it, But the thing that it reminds me most of is old German impressionist films, like the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the kind of stuff that Nicolas Cage is really into, where you try to portray not what reality would look like through a security camera, but instead what reality feels like.
What it feels like. I mean, like the urban legends that people talk about in the internet, like lots of people see this tall man with a black hat. Lots of people see this like old lady. Like people all come together and talk about this like collective unconscious in a way online and say, yeah, we all see this like freaky thing. And like, what would it be like to be that person that sees that thing and then talks to people online and tries to piece together, like, what does this mean? Like, that is part of the experience on Earth. Like, a lot of people are living that. So Lynch creates this universe where these like symbolic characters that people see are valid, they're real. Like,
here, have you heard the one about Lavender Town?
No, what's Lavender Town?
Is it the Japanese version, the early version of the game, of the Pokemon Red and Blue game?
Yeah, so the story goes that the ghost that you have to find in the first Pokemon release of the game, that the guy that created the MIDI soundtrack for the game had accidentally programmed in a series of frequencies.
Yes.
That basically just drove him insane.
What?
And he killed himself.
The first guy that like was programming Lavender Town.
Yeah. The guy that made the music.
And the frequencies, like, see, so this shit, we're talking about like people and like symbolic ghosts and that kind of thing.
I mean, it's rubbish, like, but
I think
it's still
we
cool.
also we need to talk about electricity and like Lynch's relationship
we need
to like
talk about electricity,
human advancement. And I think that one more thing I want to say is that like societies or cultures used to have these like collective myths, and I think that from globalization, like those have kind of been shattered. But what he entertains is the idea that they can be brought back again in a way, or there can be this like kind of cultural superstition again in like contemporary America. And I think that as horrible as like the things that happen in the Twin Peaks universe is, something has been lost in a way. Like, I feel kind of sad that my life is so straight-laced and like scientific, like sauce, but I do. Like, I kind of like the fact that people used to wonder about the supernatural as a culture and create myths about it together, and we don't really have that anymore. So like Twin Peaks lets that run riot in a sense.
I don't know that I agree that we don't create myths. I think we're creating myths all the time.
I think we do, but I mean, the idea that like in
Podcasting
this little
is a myth.
this little ecosystem of this town, the myths are working alongside the people, and you know that there's a whole fabric to it. So
It definitely sounded good when you said it. I was convinced.
but I think that what he tries to do is create contemporary myths that reflect upon human advancement. So a lot of the myths that we've had are like these ghost figures. They're like centuries old. Do you know what I mean? Like the idea of like a succubus,
Yeah,
or
succubus or an incubus.
a changeling, you know, all of these things are centuries old. So like he's created like 20th century ghosts that would have a weird relationship with electricity and that kind of thing. And I think that's really cool.
You need to read this book by Martha Nochimson. She's a teacher in NYU, and she's written, I think, 2 books and a couple of more things on Lynch. She wrote one book in 1997, and it's all about that. It's all about the Jungian collective unconsciousness and how that manifests itself in Lynch's work. Like, so, yeah, I mean...
I think that he creates, like, materialist ghosts, and that they're ghosts of the material of the time and place they've come out of. They're not, like, ghosts that have just been plucked out of another history and put into a story.
Yeah.
His ghosts are, like, material because they relate to the electricity plant down the road, the trees, like they're 20th century ghosts, and I think that that's really cool.
Although I don't know, I think I get the sense that the spirits of the Black Lodge are older than that. I get the sense that there's something about David Lynch's films that whenever he presents the supernatural, it always seems translated through a medium. It always seems like we can't, as viewers, we can't fathom the spirits that he's talking about. Mm-hmm. So he shows them to us in ways that we might be able to understand, in human forms, I guess.
Sure.
I have a load of questions about the film that I actually just want to ask you too, because you know more about Lynch than I do. But I don't know. But I don't want to.
No, go for it. I have some things. I have some talking points here, but honestly, I think we're doing just fine.
But I like what you just said there, Daff, with the idea. So specifically, when we see the ghosts talking. Mm-hmm. Or the spirits in the Black Lodge, you get the idea they're being translated. And yes, I think that we have to then look at what the Black Lodge looks like to see why you're getting that impression. Like, one thing would maybe be like the Roman bust that's in the room. That's a big feature. Is that kind of giving you the idea that, you know, there is this collection of symbols? It's very postmodern, like the decor that relate sort of, to like other times.
Metamodern?
Oh, is it metamodern? It's metamodern, I think.
See our podcast from another week.
Yeah, no, I was just being an asshole. No, I have a question, and it relates to the Black Lodge thing. And it's me coming from the perspective of, what did I just watch? What's the deal with the man from the other place? So the man from the other place I was just reading today is meant to be the one-armed man's other arm?
His other arm, yes.
And then he turns into a tree?
Yeah, but that's not in Fire Walk With Me. What specifically is that in season 1?
I think it's in season 1 or 2 that
you
find out that the man from another place is Mike's severed arm.
And then they were saying that the arm of the other girl went numb.
Yes, Teresa's arm went numb for a few days before she disappeared or something like that.
So here's something cool, right? I did a neurobiology course in my undergrad, and people get like phantom limb pain all the time. Like if they've had a severed limb, the brain keeps the neural pathway of what that limb felt like. And the last time that they had it, it was painful because it was injured. So it doesn't just go away. Even though you're looking down at your body and you don't have that arm anymore, it doesn't just go away. That over years, your brain had built up the pathway for that arm and what it felt like to have that arm.
Yeah.
And like CBT, where you have to rebuild networks, what this neurobiologist, who I'll need to put his name in the comments because I can't remember right now, what he worked with the people doing was actually setting up a mirror where they could sit down and use the arm that they still had, but look in the mirror as though it was their left arm, say, that they lost, and recreate a pathway of using that arm that was like positive, I guess, to take away the pain that they were experiencing. So I think that like Lynch always does play with like science and the kind of strange parts of science that we don't collectively know. A lot of like neurobiology studies were being done in the 90s, and basically the idea that this arm could be like a whole entity on its own, even though it's gone, I fuck with that. Like, I feel like there's always an element of reality in his supernatural. Like, so like, and it's the way that it's sketched out is literally a brain. It looks with like the neural pathways coming off it. It looks like a tree, which is
the tree in season 3 now. What are you talking about?
The like realization of the man from the other place is like a brain with the stem and the kind of, well, I guess it's attached to a tree, but what it looks like to me is like the neural networks.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's deliberate.
So,
I mean, look, if we're talking about science, I don't know, certainly there's this whole question of dimensions interplaying with each other.
Did we answer your Black Lodge question, by the way?
No, well, you sort of did. I don't know. So he's just, is it just kind of roll with it? Like, something about ghost limbs, maybe that makes sense, but then that the arm evolves into something else. I think I'm getting way too into like. But
in the Black Lodge, it's like, it's a fertilizer of another dimension that makes things be. So, you know,
that's so weird.
Something that's came from
fertilizer of another dimension.
So something that's came from our dimension ends up looking really strange, but there's still a recognizable element of it. Is what I think.
So Martha Notcham says that the detectives in Twin Peaks appear to be 2D people trying to figure out a 3D world. I really like that.
That's Martha.
That's good. It makes sense, I think.
Take me for dinner first. Wow, that is like big talk. I love it.
It's great, but I think it works really, really well. And I just, look, you were saying about the interplay of like science, mysticism, and reality in Lynch. And, you know, look, I've been reading an awful lot about string theory, struggling to read an awful lot about string theory over the last couple of days. And look, I don't know if any of you know anything. So it was this mad theory it came up with in the 1970s to try and compensate for weird things we were seeing in the maths of science, and it basically ends up that it doesn't really seem to hold any water now, which is a bit of a shame, but you know, it's kind of also good because it seems like we've narrowed things down. But basically, string theory only works if we think about reality or, you know, this physical plane that we reside in as having, I think, up to 9 dimensions. It changes because some theories need 13 dimensions, other theories only need 7, but I think it's around 9 dimensions that you need in order to accommodate all the different things. But you know, a while ago, I think in the 90s or the 80s, they were able to show that we didn't need that many, or we just simply cannot have that many dimensions at a macro scale, because we don't seem to see any of them like reaching out into space or anything. But what they then came up with, these string theorists, was an idea of like micro dimensions.
What if they're small instead?
Yeah. What if they're so small?
Wait a minute.
You can't detect them.
Yeah.
No matter how much energy you use, because if you use loads of energy to try and detect these things, they would you know, the amount of energy that you put in would mean that you can't detect them anymore, because you would like sort of change the measurement process. But anyway, as I was watching Fire Walk with Me, I couldn't get that out of my head, that there's meant to be extra dimensional forces going around in this world, and that there is, you know, there's up down, there's left right, there's depth, and then there's, you know, time on top of that. But then there seems to be the Black Lodge dimension, And the Black Lodge dimension seems to be able to create temporal loops. There seems to be these like connections of time.
Yeah, time doesn't work in the same way because...
Yeah, I mean, that's down to sort of a choice of direction as well, because if you think about what the man from another place does, is that he doesn't speak... He speaks as you and I speak, but it's reversed.
Yeah.
So I think that's a conscious element, I think, that this place is extra-dimensional. Time doesn't work in the same way.
Yes.
Oh, so the 2D people in a 3D world thing, I thought that was incredible. I think that that's how we live our lives. Like, just like the arm thing I mentioned, like in a 2D understanding, you're like, the arm's gone, problem's over. Why is it still lingering? And in a 3D world, it's still there technically, like in your brain. I think that we do live that way. And what about then, so the way that we're understanding the world is different in Twin Peaks. The way that the characters are, they don't have this like grasp of it. And that's how we still live right now. If we're to say that like human exceptionalism and the like Enlightenment project is done, it's toast. You know, we're not the center of the universe. Like we're dealing with a lot of these problems in the 20th century. But what if the Twin Peaks world is one where like, as opposed to the universe expanding from the Big Bang, it's actually contracting in the way, and stuff is like being pulled back together that maybe doesn't relate to one another and is from different places, but it's being like forced and spliced, and that's why we get like the people in the town being pulled in with these other dimensional beings that are terrifying and they don't want to be merged up with.
Yeah, I think the scene that I was thinking of mostly was it's I think, is it Laura is just walking through the woods, or is it maybe it's Coop is walking through the woods and then he's just suddenly in the Red Room.
The Red Room has an entrance. It has a pool of tar surrounded by birch trees, I think. It has an entrance.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was meant to just be just sort of a random spot in the woods.
No. So that's in the film. Yeah, it's in the film, but it's also in the TV series. That's how Coop finds the Black Lodge to begin with. He finds the entrance.
I'm going to go ahead and say that this is all bollocks, that we are really reading this way too much. But
absolutely not. Because when Annie is in Laura's bed, she says the good Coop is in the Red Room. He's stuck there, and that's what happens at the end of season 2, which is like way after Laura's died. So
then
Annie doesn't even move to the town yet.
I'm going to keep fanning this flame, and I'm going to say, is it a pool of tar, or is it a black hole?
Maybe.
Well, that's what I said about the contracting thing, like stuff being pulled together.
Yeah.
Is it like a little toady cutesy baby black hole in colonized
the
America?
Kawaii black hole.
It's just a little teensy, and it's just like, oh, guys, I swallowed some more people. I'm so soz. And is that why people can't come out? But I guess that
things do come out of black holes, but they come out randomized, through Hawking radiation. Yeah,
it's a black hole. That's why it's called the Black Lodge. That's it. We've solved it. We've read it. We've done it.
String theory.
Case closed. Shut down all the Reddit threads.
String
That's
theory,
it.
black holes,
That's it.
and Twin Peaks.
15 minutes to go, and we've solved it. What do we do now?
I don't know.
Well, I've got some more stuff that I wanted to ask you guys about.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask away.
What on earth was that line about turkeys about?
What, between Laura and James?
James says,
you're not a turkey.
You're not a turkey in the corn.
She goes gobble, gobble, gobble.
What is that?
Is a turkey in the corn... do turkeys want to be in the corn?
Hold on a
is my question.
second.
Isn't that
the
excess?
corn thing where you said that the word for sorrow and pain is similar to
Garmonbozia.
is similar to the word for corn?
Oh, why are we getting back to corn?
Hold on a second, because
Back to corn.
she's a turkey in the corn, like she's helpless, surrounded by all this corn, and she's eating it, and then he's like, "Oh, but that's not you," and she's like, "Gobble, gobble, gobble, my fate is sealed."
But she's
I'm
also saying,
going to live in sorrow and pain.
She lives sort of quite excessively as well. She's having a lot of sex. She takes drugs. Is the
But
corn
that's to cope with the sorrow and pain.
Oh, so it is.
That's an addiction that is to trying to like numb herself from the sorrow and pain ultimately. So
I don't know. I think it's just there's some belter lines in Fire Walk with Me. Donna speaks to Laura at one point and says, "If you were falling through space, how would you fall?" And she says, "Well, I would fall faster and faster until I was engulfed in flame."
And the angels wouldn't save me.
I mean, like I think that's a banger of a line. I think that one's great. But then, gobble, gobble. What is... I just can't help.
It's sometimes like David Lynch tries to write folksy. He tries to imagine... I mean, he is from small town America.
Yeah.
But sometimes you wonder if he ever really listened to anyone speak in small town America.
But sometimes I wonder if he's just taking the piss. And, like... Because, like, his character of Cole...
awesome.
Agent Cole.
One of my favorites.
Or
Agent Cole.
Agent Cole.
Yeah.
He is so weird and so funny that it's hard to not see elements of Twin Peaks as comic anyway. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
But they're always about sort of... Cole in particular, I always feel like language is always some sort of mixed up in David Lynch films. It's always... Things are misunderstood. People say seemingly random things that have sort of laterally related relationships to other things in the world. I mean, it's almost a sort of parody of realism in a way.
Yeah, but it's those kind of inconsistencies, though, is it not just a big hint to just not take it too seriously or something? I don't know. I always feel weird. I don't know. I think the main thing is I feel like if I had watched Twin Peaks when I was 16, I would have a tattoo. Mm-hmm. As it turns out, I played Final Fantasy VII instead. And it's weirdly really Lynchian. I didn't know that until...
Right, yeah.
I have a Twin Peaks tattoo.
I
have a blue rose.
You got the blue rose.
But I got it before I watched Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks logic.
Poser logic.
I didn't even know what the blue rose was, and I have a blue rose, but anyway.
Garmonbozia.
But doesn't the like moment where it's surreal and comedy breaks through make the rest of the atmosphere all the more chilling? Like, isn't it about providing that contrast? It would almost be a little bit like just forceful and heavy-handed if the whole thing was as like unsettling.
God, yeah.
But I suppose the comedy is also unsettling because in the context it doesn't make sense. But like, we've all seen people who don't make sense in the context around them or behave in a way that doesn't make sense all the time in our daily lives. So like, you're talking about why has he done this? I honestly think that this is just how Lynch has experienced life and other human beings, is like he's seen people behave really strange and gone, whoa, and wrote it down in his notebook. Like, I think it happens all the time.
And that's true. I think that extends to the way he directs his actors as well. He has them play these really wooden... There's this sort of really wooden way and really dialogue in a really wooden way.
People like mess up all the time. They say a weird platitude. They say it wrong. Something comes out strange.
And I think it's always about as well people not being as they appear, as reality being a performance, as being a sort of performance that you can't really rehearse for.
Just to go back, this fantastic, our guest star on the episode this week, Martha Hutchinson, they noted that as well, that discrepancy between like how people appear versus, you know, the sort of lived reality, and they draw on The Elephant Man and some of the other films that Lynch did as well, but mainly The Elephant Man, about how that's a film where, you know, somebody has a kind of like beautiful internal spirit, but their exterior kind of damns them, and Fire Walk with Me then is the flip side of that, where Laura is almost trapped, is almost tortured by her external outward appearance, and, you know, internally then is like afflicted by this like internal wounding, you know, from the incest, and then it sort of manifests itself in a strange way where the film plays on this the oddity of people's exteriors with that scene. We just watched it last night. I think it's actually now been deleted from the
Was it one of the missing parts?
I think it's in the missing parts, but basically Laura sees a ceiling fan. You know, like you're talking about like the weirdness of electricity.
Oh, and we get that long shot of her face becoming increasingly sort of contorted.
Yeah, you know, like when you say the word toothpaste too many times, and you're just what is toothpaste? And it loses all meaning. So the camera just like lingers on
the ceiling fan.
No, her face.
Oh,
what's the actress's name?
Sherilyn Lee, I think.
Sherilyn Lee's face. And it's initially
Cheryl Lee.
Cheryl Lee. Initially, it's like, oh well, that's Cheryl Lee, very pretty. But then there's this like flashing electricity that keeps happening, so that it really messes with like the contrast of the image. So her face becomes like whited out, and you see like how like the image of a smiling American face with perfect teeth and the perfect rictus of a smile weirdly starts to become haunting, like and very disturbing. And she smiles increasingly, but never so much that the smile is forced. It would still be a natural smile-ish if you saw it for the first time, but just this long shot completely alienates what a human face, the sort of familiarity that we would have with what is initially a human face. So
and I think that like the Palmer households and everything, it's like this very quintessential like white American success story, like, and the odd things that take place in that house just kind of like pick at the seams a little of what we've looked to as like a perfect life, or the pinnacle of
American success.
Like if you just focus on it a little, like there's actually an incredible amount of like dysfunction and tragedy within that family. So
that's one thing that bugs me about Twin Peaks, and it's a question that I have, and I think you two hopefully can answer this for me. Is Lynch trying to say that 1950s America was fucking great, or is he just trying to say that these demons and stuff from the red roomy dimension just happened to come when they happened to come?
I was going to sneeze there. It was a demon. It's gone.
What do you mean?
Oh
what do
my
you
god,
mean
guys! Sorry, is it set in the 50s or the 80s? I thought it was
it's in the 80s.
I thought it was 80s to 50s.
It's late 80s. Yeah.
Okay, phew,
thank
God.
Oh
my god.
Was that so? Was that the end of your question?
Yeah. Is Lynch saying that the world was amazing?
Fuck no. There's domestic abuse. There's murder.
What I think he's doing.
All right, fair enough.
What I think he's doing.
Rape?
This is a thing that he returns to quite a lot in his films. Is that he is fascinated with
the aesthetics.
Well, even figures like Elvis Presley, he's fascinated with, because Nicolas Cage basically plays him in Wild at Heart. Classic cars, rock and roll music, massive part.
Diner culture.
I never interpreted his usage as being romantic, like a romantic usage. I always read them as being, if you think about what the history of American masculinity is, and this popularized image of the 1950s male, the one who drives the car, the one who takes girls out, the one who plays guitar, even
sort of like Chris Isaac.
Yeah. I don't think that stuff is lost on him. I think that there is a strain in most David Lynch films that he has something to say, and I don't know exactly what it is, about violence. He has something to say about systemic violence specifically, in terms of the way men treat women in his films.
For sure, that's all there.
I don't know what it is exactly, and I don't know if Fire Walk With Me implies that it's sort of an external spirit. I don't believe that the Black Lodge is like a sort of it is an extra dimensional space, but I don't believe it's beyond
separated.
Our own. Yeah. It's within our own. I think he uses things like 1950s aesthetics because he believes that it's part of the same lineage of violence, really.
Yes.
I think.
Well, we see in the season 3 of Twin Peaks, spoilers, that you can kind of read that the potential like lodge spirits were all created during the atomic bomb.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, that's the bit that bugs me. Is it that they were...
I think he's speaking about the 20th century as a whole, though, and like he's archiving it, and evil's a big part of archiving the 20th century. You know, people like to look back to the 50s as like this very simple, like cutesy, like rock and roll time, like, and that's such a narrow perspective. There was so much like atrocity and evil taking place. So like he sketches it almost in a realer way than other people, like, but it's a symbolic representation.
There is a sense in that history needs to be rewritten, but it's a hard thing to rewrite history. So
he does it in an imaginative way.
Mythologize it in some way.
Yeah.
Mythologizing that evil, I guess. I don't know.
But did it start with the bomb? Or is he saying that there was...
older spirits that got brought out?
Messed up or annoyed by the bomb, or I don't know.
I don't have to. I actually resubscribed to Now TV so I could watch
season 3 again.
Season 3. I really want to watch season 3 again. Yeah.
I mean,
when I have
if I could just speak to that, and like
it was like 2 months ago.
The spirits coming out and them being like adjacent to evils of human creation. I was looking at what people have read about the symbol on the ring.
Oh yeah.
And it seems to be...
We teased that earlier, actually. This is really good, because we're about to wrap it up. So
yeah, it seems to be an evolved version of a rune from the oldest runic alphabet called the Elder Futhark, which was then appropriated by the Nazis as a symbol with wings added. And the Twin Peaks ring symbol has an additional line to that evolved version of an ancient rune, which the Nazis used. It's like a further evolution of that. So I think that speaks to what we're talking about, that there were like older evils potentially that can't be known that were like brought to the surface in the 20th century. And then in the 80s, Lynch has kind of like furthered them in a way, representationally, with this like symbol. But other fan theories say that you can just take the 4 segments and read them as the White Lodge, the Black Lodge, and the Twin Peaks of the town either side. Yeah. So the White and the Black Lodge are like nestled in the middle. But it's hard to deny.
We never see the White Lodge, I believe, do we?
Not in Fire Walk With Me.
Do we see it in the series? I don't know that we do.
I
have to go back and check, but I don't think we do. But, I think it's only alluded to.
In any case, like that, you could definitely like read the Nazi symbol into the ring. So
do you see the White Lodge in season 3? Is the White Lodge not where the tall man hangs out with the girl who's basically an angel, but they're dressed like it's the 20s? Maybe.
Oh, you mean in season 3?
Yeah.
Possibly. I'm not sure.
Here,
it's possible.
I think we're more muddled than when we even began, but we knew this. We knew this would happen.
Season 3's a belter, though. Honestly, like that weird ball in a cube that like eats people.
Oh, it's great.
In New York.
It's great.
I think like
it's one of the best things he's done. I think
he takes it to other locations in season 3. So it's like the evil and the uncertainty kind of is spread about.
I tell you what, like I'm not 100% sold on Fire Walk With Me, but I'm not going to forget it in a hurry.
One thing I'll say about the film conclusively is that I think it suffers from being called a Twin Peaks film, for sure, I think. I think it suffers from being associated with the series. Because I see it, in hindsight, as being a stepping stone for a filmmaker, I think. For a filmmaker like Lynch. I think it was one of these things that I've read a lot of claims that it was supposed to be the start of a Twin Peaks film series, and I think in failing to do that, and that would certainly explain why these sort of story threads are picked up and then put down. But I think these were ideas that he took on to future films, and I think it's a very telling film for any David Lynch fan. I think
I would love to find someone who'd never watched any Twin Peaks and get them to watch Fire Walk With Me first, then season 1, then the start and end of season 2, cutting out certain bits, then season 3. And I bet it would feel like a like an explosion and then a contraction into order, and then leading out to another explosion again.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know. That sounded more pretentious when I said it out loud.
No, I was just thinking that you basically want to find an oracle to interpret Twin Peaks for you.
Basically, yeah.
Which is like, it's kind of justifying that there is a symbolic language there that we can understand.
No!
Which was the point that you disagreed with.
No, against interpretation, it's all madness and chaos.
No, it's a puzzle and we can solve it.
Damn it.
Okay, well, I guess that seems like a good place to wrap it up,
Seems
guys.
like a
Let's
good
wrap
place.
it up.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And what are we doing next?
So I think next week there's a couple of different possibilities. We might be looking at the first Purge. We might be looking at
That's the first Purge, not the first Purge film.
Yeah, we're looking at the film known as The First Purge. But there's a chance we'll be looking at that. Chance we'll be looking at Your Next, or possibly just a Japanese film, because I'm a massive weeb.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
well, I'm sure you'll be
Good.
saying that
we need
symbols can be
audience.
read on your Japanese week.
No. All right.
All right.
Thanks
Okay.
very
Well,
much.
thank you, everyone. Yeah. See you later.
See you later.
Bye.